Bienvenidos a todos a nuestro nuevo Agile Critics, hoy con una persona muy importante para nosotros y un referente pues a nivel mundial en los temas de agilidad en personas. Cómo los equipos y cómo las personas viviendo los valores y los principios ágiles realmente potencian sus resultados y se unen a esta travesía de agilidad. Con Pia he tenido el placer de estar en los cursos y en las formaciones de Pia y he aprendido cómo el poder de las personas se vuelve fundamental en esta travesía. Cómo reconocer que agilidad no es una receta, que en realidad es un mindset. Y que en la medida que eso lo tengamos claro y lo podamos llevar cada vez más a las organizaciones, nuestras transformaciones irán creciendo y serán pues aumentando en sus resultados. Pia hoy tiene diferentes libros, tiene su primer libro, Agile People, súper recomendado para todos. Y hoy nos va a hablar de su segundo libro en colaboración con diferentes personas que conocen mucho de este tema de agilidad en personas y es Agile Principles. Entonces, de verdad que Pia, mil gracias por estar aquí con nosotros, por permitirnos traer este conocimiento también a Latinoamérica. Y ahora sí, empecemos a conversar. Muchas gracias, Pia.
Una recomendación antes para todos los que se están conectando, antes de que inicie Pia. En la parte de abajo van a encontrar un logo como del mundo que dice básicamente traductor. Por favor, si colóquese en el canal de español o en el canal de inglés. Pues depende del idioma que puedan tener. Esto les va a permitir poder tener una mejor interacción, ¿vale? Tenemos traducción simultánea, pero sí necesitan ustedes seleccionar el canal. Entonces, bienvenidísimos y iniciamos con esta ya Critic y bienvenida, Pia.
Okay, thank you very much, Sandra, Jose, Christina. Very nice to be here with you today. And I'm looking forward to hopefully inspire you a little bit more about how to work with Agile people, because my field is about Agile HR and Agile leadership. And my last book is just coming out now. This is a test print of the book that I had in advance, but it's coming out now in the end of August, beginning of September. And we have a book launch. And as you might know, we have 3 tickets that some of you could win from this session. So try to do that. If you don't win a ticket, you are of course very welcome to buy a ticket from agilepeople.com/book launch. I will show you that a little bit later. So Agile People Principles, what is that? Well, I will start with a little bit of a presentation for myself, actually. I'm the founder of Agile People, and Agile People is a global community, and we have a vision to turn workplaces into life places. Actually, we want people to be able to perform and be happy. So you can be really productive from intrinsic motivation instead of being told what to do. Usually I describe myself as a hybrid between HR, finance, leadership, and IT, because I have a finance degree from the university in Gothenburg. I started to work as an IT project manager with large talent management system implementation, you know, this kind of global system implementations, IT system implementations, where I went around the world and rolled out these different talent management processes in systems. And when I was doing that, I realized that one size does not fit all. Really, we should have tailored the processes for unique individual needs. And really, the customers that we worked with locally were not so happy with a centralized global view of how things should be done. And gradually, we started to understand that we cannot work with standardized, rigid processes that tell people how to work and what to do in HR. We need to work with a lot more agile processes and faster ways of learning and improving and tailoring towards unique needs in the local markets. And that's why I started to work with Agile in HR and in leadership. In 2012, we actually created Agile People in Sweden. And then we started with conferences, meetup groups. We did an Agile HR training that I've been running ever since. And I've been an Agile Master since 2009 now. It might have been one of the biggest changes in my life because I didn't fit as a project manager, really. I didn't feel comfortable in that role, telling people what to do. I was thinking all the time that they know very well what to do because based on their competencies and their skills, I only needed to point at the direction, tell about the why, and leave the how to the people. Nowadays, I call myself an inspiration director and an Agile People coach. And this is also a role that is very close to my heart. The Agile People coach is something that we have developed during the years. And to be an Agile People coach means that you help people to develop and grow in an agile environment and to help teams also to grow, and also the whole organization to implement the structures and the culture that will help the organization to be flexible, adaptable, and change in the world when nothing seems to be like it was before. And you know all that when we live in this VUCA world and when things like COVID happen, then we need to maybe change the way we work. Maybe we need to change the way we do things. So it's really important to increase business agility. I'm very passionate about combining people and Agile to create engaged and motivated employees. I've been working with this now since 2012. I am from Gothenburg in Sweden, but I consider myself a citizen of the world because I've been traveling very, very much the last 3 years since my first book came out. But now everything stopped in March 2020. Like for many other people, my reality changed completely. I needed to stay at home instead of traveling the world. And I produced online training material, and I recorded video films, and I started to give these online courses from my home. And I've been doing that for 6 months now. And I'm not sure actually that I want to go back to traveling because this is perfect. I'm sitting in my summer house in a small cottage on the west coast of Sweden. I went out with a boat on the sea this morning. I went for a walk and a swim, came back, did a training, had some meetings. You know, this is life as it should be. So I'm really happy I don't have to spend time in the aeroplane and in airports anymore. My proverb is, nothing is impossible until you stop trying. And that really exemplifies who I am as a person. But I am really unimportant here because here in this session, we are also going to use your competence in different areas. The collective intelligence in all the people that we have in different groups is much greater than mine or anybody else's alone. So you will get the opportunity to ask questions. We will have a Q&A, and I will listen to you, and you will listen to what I say. I will listen to what you say, and we can share some learnings and improve together. The biggest learning actually happens when we share what we know with other people. And let's kick off this presentation, and then we'll stop for Q&A after approximately 25 minutes from now. The impact of big trends is something that we need to take into account when we talk about the agile reality today. there are major shifts in industries, and maybe the most important shift is the digitalization from large industry disruptors such as Amazon and Uber to simple things like collaborating in teams on a distance via, for example, tools like Trello boards, to communicating, doing meetings and interviews via video using Zoom, Skype, and other tools, to doing our banking and our ordering with a variety of services and apps via our mobile phones. The next big trend I want to bring up is globalization. It's about working, traveling, and doing business across borders is becoming a lot easier all the time, except now, of course, when COVID came. Now it's not so easy to travel anymore. But from being a citizen of a country or a town, primarily, you can become a citizen of the world, also online, I have experienced. The shift to knowledge work is another trend, from working with our hands or, with our brains more or less switched off, to producing products and solutions via creativity and innovation and knowledge power that aren't physical at all. And then we have the climate change. We are living in an environment that is changing at a faster rate, and we will need all our ingenuity and innovative capacity for our planet to remain viable for humans. The last trend I will bring up is the sharing economy. Companies like Uber and Airbnb have appeared as a reaction on the waste and the materialism that characterized the latter part of the industrial era. This is a counter reaction on a lifestyle not viable for the planet and continues to grow. Not everybody have to own everything. People are sharing houses, cars, tools, and all sorts of things. So I'm going to explain to you this VUCA acronym. V means volatility. This is the nature and dynamics of change and the nature and speed of change forces and change catalysts. Everything is changing all the time, and volatility describes how that happens. U stands for uncertainty, the lack of predictability, the prospects for surprise, and the sense of awareness and understanding of issues and events. How aware are we of unpredictable stuff? C stands for complexity, the multiplex of forces, the confounding of issues, no cause and effect chain, and confusion that surrounds organizations. Everything affects everything else all the time, and it's not simple anymore. If we do this, it leads to that, does not work anymore. Last but not least, ambiguity is the A, the haziness of reality and the potential for misreads and the mixed meanings of conditions. This might be difficult to translate, I'm thinking now. It's about cause and effect confusion. The same thing can have different meanings. That's the core of ambiguity. I will start to have a look at history. We are looking now at a workplace from about 80 years ago, and this is the ironing department. And today, these women in many places in the world have been replaced with robots. It was about doing the same thing over and over again. The challenge was to make these workflows as effective as possible and to standardize processes. The women on this picture had no say in how things should be done. It was all carefully thought out by a few, probably men in the top. They were just doing what they were told. And this was a time when hierarchies ruled, when formal power was actually a sign of success and tasks were assigned to employees. Maybe this is the case still in some parts of the world, but in many companies, organizations like startups and the tech sector and fashion industry, these things have changed by now. The future of work, what is this? We are transitioning, and what is going on right now in the world of work? Well, artificial intelligence and robotics will ultimately actually create more work, not less, as you might think. But it's different skills will be needed. So there won't be a shortage of jobs, but there will be a shortage of the right talent that could fill those positions. The majority of the workforce will freelance by 2027, based on the workforce growth rates found in freelancing in America. Remote work becomes the norm, and we are already seeing this. This slide was made long before Corona hit the world, the pandemic. But now this is a reality for sure. People will have a new geographic freedom to live wherever they want to live and to work via digital tools. In this complex reality that I've been describing so far, we have to move from viewing the organization as a machine that can be controlled and managed to viewing it as a social system consisting of human beings and relationships between people. People are not cogs in a machinery. They have feelings, dreams, challenges, and thoughts, and they cannot be controlled. People are not robots. They are complex adaptive systems that work from intrinsic motivation. It's not because we have to do something, it's because we want to do something that we will be productive and perform well. It means that we need to stop to see people as resources and view them as the living organisms as they are, who we need to treat differently to work optimally. Everybody's different. Everybody has different basic needs and desires, and we need to understand what makes every person tick. No standardization or boxing people with labels or grades anymore. Just skills to understand better what makes each person do what they do. So to create this well-functioning social system is a very complex task, and we need to use a lot more experimentation and trial and error for it to work. There are no recipes for success anymore, and Agile is not the silver bullet. What do you need to do to make a person function optimally? Think about that. Care about the basic psychological needs of the people, and these are different for everybody. This is a picture from a Ford factory. People were indeed a part of a machinery on this time. Scientific management, it was also called Taylorism, was a theory of management that analyzed workflows. Its main objective was to improve economic efficiency, especially labor productivity. It was one of the earliest attempts to apply science to the engineering of processes and to management. Taylorism was highly effective for meeting challenges of that time, which was mainly about industrial manufacturing and logistics. So the management built systems of standardization to create efficiency at the production line. This is what Henry Ford said, and it's something, it says actually something about the way he viewed people. He said, thinking is the hardest work there is, which is probably the reason why so few engage in it. So it says something about he viewed the workers and management. These were two groups, very different from each other. They were the doers on one side, and on the other hand, there were the thinkers, who were the smart ones, who thought out how we should be able to work. So a few people in the top created structures of micromanagement that flowed top down in a hierarchy. another person on this time. He actually wrote this book in the end of the 1950s, beginning of the 1960s. It's called The Human Side of the Enterprise, Douglas McGregor. In this book, he writes about theory X and theory Y, and that is about how the human mind works. This is extremely interesting because it's a very early insight from the end of the 1950s about what your assumptions are about the most effective way to manage people. How would you be most effective in managing people? Is it about micromanagement and control? Or is it about finding intrinsic motivation and giving freedom to people to decide about the how themselves? So human view X, according to Douglas McGregor, is when people are lazy, you see them as lazy and unmotivated, and they don't want to take responsibility. So they would avoid doing something if not somebody is forcing them to do something. Theory Y, on the other hand, is when you believe that people want to be the best they can be and contribute to creating value for other people. This is an intrinsic drive that all people have, we believe, and they will try to create value for other people if we give them the right conditions and the right prerequisites. Most people see themselves as Y people. It's only other people who are X people. So then you can ask yourself if this is just a prejudice that we have about other people, and if they get the right conditions and prerequisites at work, they would probably also be Y persons. It's really about the system of work that we are providing to our employees. Do we believe in them, and do we set them up for success by providing a system where they can release their full human potential? Or do we set them up to fail by not giving them the opportunity to do what they do best every day, not removing the impediments for performing, and not giving them the resources they need to succeed? So if we make sure that every person in the organization can show up every day and be their best selves, do we then believe that they will perform better if we support them? This is important because how we view people affects how we structure our management processes. If we believe that people are lazy and don't want to take responsibility, we will create lots of policies and rules, processes and systems that would keep people doing what you want them to do. But if you trust people and you believe that people want to contribute to create value for some customer group, and that they want to take ownership for what they do, you don't need so many policies and rules. Essentially, in traditional organizations with an X view of people, we optimize for the worst possible employee. We put everybody in jail since very few would break the rules. Instead, we need to take these cases and talk to them separately, these people who are violating trust. Violating trust should have consequences, but not for everybody. This is my first book, Agile People, a radical approach for HR and managers that leads to motivated employees. It was written in 2017, and it's the course literature for my Agile HR and leadership courses. This is a second book. It's called the Agile People Picture Book, which consists of 220 pictures that illustrates the first book. And it's easier to scroll through this book. It's a lot of images and very nice by Nico and Elsa Simpson from South Africa. They created the illustration. This is the book that we are working on right now and that we are preparing the book launch for. It's called Agile People Principles, Your Call to Action for the Future of Work. And this book was written by 35 Agile people from around the world. So from South America, South Africa, New Zealand, Singapore, US, Canada, you name it. People from all over the world has been working to co-create 35 wonderful chapters about the Agile People Principles. And now I guess you are extremely curious about the Agile People Principles. What are they and what does that mean to follow principles instead of using tools and methods? And we are coming to that. But first, I would just like you to see this one, because we are giving also, except for the 3 free tickets that you can win, we are also giving you a conference offer if you want to buy a ticket. So you get the book launch and you also get a free ebook if you enter the discount code here when you buy your ticket for the book launch. So you get a free ebook and a conference ticket, 48 hours loaded with different sessions around Agile People Principles. PMAT 2020 is the code. So please write down the code and go and register if you don't win a ticket here today. Okay, so the Agile People Principles, here they are. And here it looks like there are 36 principles, and that's because we have merged some of them. The principles are stretchable. You can do more or less of them. They together, if you try to increase all of them, they will create a fantastic culture. And this culture will take care a lot of the control for you. Transparency and trust and other principles work together to create a culture where it becomes very difficult to break rules or to do the wrong things. These are some Agile People tools and practices, and I'm sure you recognize some of them. For example, Scrum, Kanban boards, maybe merit money, maybe you recognize retrospectives or delegation boards or something else. These are just some of the tools and practices. If you work with Agile, you are probably familiar with the practices and the tools. You may not be as familiar, however, with the principles, but it's the principles who have the greatest effect on your organization. The tools can help you to increase the principles, but that's the purpose of the tools. It may also be that you work in your organization, everybody's working with Scrum, but you are very unagile because it's not about the tools and practices. It's actually all about the principles. So where do they come from? How did we come up with these 35 principles that I will go through with you here today? Well, we did start from the original Agile Manifesto that you find on agilemanifesto.org. So that was the kind of basis, and we felt that there were some things missing here because it was very geared towards IT software development, and we thought that there were some things that were not really mentioned in here that needed to be there as well. We got some more parts of the puzzle when we looked at the modern Agile framework. So here we we saw the 4 important cornerstones of modern Agile, which are make people awesome. And it's not just, you know, employees and customers, it's all the people in the ecosystem around the organization. It's about delivering value continuously, because value is the ultimate proof of success of a successful organization. A successful organization is one that delivers value to external customers. And then we have make safety a prerequisite, and this is about psychological safety, which is extremely important in the platform, that we have psychological safety, so that we have people who trust each other, people who dare to experiment, make mistakes and innovate, fail fast, we talk about also in Agile, and experiment and learn rapidly, so that we can move on and do the things that really work. Then we actually created also an Agile People Manifesto that you find on agilepeoplemanifesto.org. And here we have 7 different principles that I will not go through with you here and now, but we were 19 Agile people who gathered on the West Coast in Sweden and worked with this for a number of days. I think, I'm not sure, but it may be that it's time for some Q&A. Am I right or am I wrong? Let's see what time it is. Yes, it's actually 8 o'clock, and maybe here in Sweden, and maybe then there is some time for a Q&A. What do you think, guys? Do we have any questions coming in? ¿Sí?
Sí, tenemos 4 preguntas en nuestro chat. Entonces, las vamos a leer.
Let's hear them.
La primera viene de Gisela Montañez. No la hace en inglés, entonces voy a tratar de leerla en español, Gisela, para que así todo el público la pueda entender, y nuestra traductora se la va a pasar en inglés a Pia, ¿ok? Entonces, ¿cuándo nos podemos llamar a nosotros mismos Agile? ¿Cuáles serían esos criterios básicos que necesitamos tener nosotros como personas para considerarnos Agile?
Okay, I think you know if you are Agile or not. It's when you live the Agile People Principles, when you have changed your mindset to see the world from another viewpoint. It's that awareness that comes with understanding that you cannot control people and you cannot control the future. And it's more of a feeling than a proof that now we are there. If you talk about people, if we talk about an organization, how can we know that an organization is agile? I think an agile organization will not anymore think about this question. An agile organization will continuously improve and learn, and they are on a journey, and they no longer ask themselves this question, because it's a culture, right? And when you know that people are happy, then you're all the time trying to learn and continuously improve. When you have a high level of psychological safety, when you have happy customers that you are producing value to, and when you have happy employees producing that value, then you probably are very agile, because that's when you have increased all the Agile People Principles. But I'm not sure that it's important to know exactly when you are, because it's always a gradual journey. You are more or less agile. You may be agile in some departments. You may be agile in some countries. Some people who are working with you might have a more or less agile mindset. So there is always a mix between traditional mindset and a more agile mindset. But I'm not sure it's even interesting to know exactly how agile you are, as long as you keep moving in that direction and improving and learning continuously. Okay, Do we have another question?
Sí, tenemos otra pregunta, muy en línea con esta que estás contestando, pero creo que es importante y es, ¿cómo podríamos medir el mindset ágil o la madurez de mindset ágil en un equipo? O la madurez mental ágil en un equipo.
Yeah, so we know in a team when people start sharing rather than hiding, when people work together and collaborate productively, when people, instead of blaming each other, try to help each other to succeed. We know when people work towards a common goal and have productive conflicts, but not moving to personal attacks. So there is this conflict continuum that we talk about in my course. At the one end, we have the artificial harmony. At the other end, we have personal attacks. So it's not good to have too little conflict. It's also not good to have too much conflict. We need to be productive, we need a diverse team who think differently, and that will have the effect that people will not always agree with each other. But this is a constructive conflict. When people are engaged, you know that they will have a bit of conflict, and that's fine, because a high-performing team can never become high-performing if we don't have that amount of constructive conflict. And they know when it's getting too much and too little. I think a team knows when they are high performing. They are creating lots of value to the customer, and that's the ultimate measure of success.
Ok, perfecto. Tenemos otro. ¿Es posible llevar a las personas de un tipo X hacia un tipo Y, cambiarles el mindset? De X people a Y people?
Yes, so I didn't tell you that, but people are not X or Y in themselves. People are acting like X or acting like Y, depending on the structures in your organization. So everybody has both X and Y inside, of course. It depends on how other people view us, what side will come out in us, our X side or our Y side. If people try to control you, try to make too much rigid rules and try to force you into ways of being and doing, then your X side comes out. You try to game the system. You try to find easy solutions. But if you are treated fairly, if people are treating you well and giving you conditions to succeed, if your manager is removing the obstacles or impediments for success and happiness, then your Y side will come out in you. So it's the management structures that decide what side will show in every person.
Listo, tenemos otra. ¿Cuáles son algunas de las mejores prácticas que recomendarían para alentar a un equipo que tiene poca colaboración? Y pues sobre todo cuando tú vienes con mentalidad ágil y ves que tienen todos los elementos completos y son ingeniosos.
Yeah, so it's not one practice, it's many different practices that we can use for that. And of course, visualization or Kanban boards or agile tools are great to give prerequisites for teams. Also, OKRs is fantastic if you want to create a common direction, common goal. And the Reese motivation profile is a fantastic tool to understand people on a deeper level. It's a tool to test people for what motivates you. How can we use you in the best possible way in our team? And what do you want to do? why do you do what you do? So this deeper understanding is about people getting to know each other deeply. And that's one of the principles, one of the Agile People Principles. Get to know people deeply, because then we can really understand why they are like they are, why they say what they say, and understand that we are all different and we will not maybe agree all the time, but we have a common goal. And if we work productively together, we can get there, and then everybody will win. So it's that intrinsic motivation that we need to find. So it's not one practice, it's many together, depending on the problem. And the Agile People Principles will guide you as to what is it we need to think about, and give you guidance in what decisions do we need to make. And is this a good or bad tool? Is this tool or practice helping us or limiting us? And using the collective power of everybody in the team. And having a good coach will also help, of course. If you have an Agile coach, an Agile People coach, who can help you with all these questions that you need to think about to work well together and to increase the benefits from the team.
Okay. ¿Cuál es el rol de un Agile People? Aquí están haciendo la pregunta. ¿Cuál es el rol de un Agile People? ¿Qué lo hace diferente a un Agile Coach?
Okay, I have that later in my presentation, so maybe we should continue the presentation and I will get there ultimately. Or what do you say? Because I'm describing the role
si
of
quieres,
the Agile People.
No, está perfecto. Si quieres, entonces la aplazamos y te voy a leer 4 preguntas más y ya seguimos. ¿Te parece? Sí, listo.
Yeah.
Ok. Las mediciones de NPS son importantes. Estás en el canal de español, Chris. Las mediciones de NPS son importantes para ver si la organización y sus personas son ágiles.
MPC, I'm not familiar with that concept.
Es la medición de satisfacción.
Oh, NPS.
NPS.
Net Promotion
Yeah,
Score.
Net Promotion.
Yeah. Yeah, this is important. What is the question exactly?
Estás en español. Estás ya en español. Ok, dale. Chris, si quiere, traduce la pregunta. ¿Ya estará?
Oh, connecting Net Promotion Score to Agile. Oh, I'm not so sure. It depends on how you define Agile, I guess. Because you find out, of course, how engaged people are and things like that, and how happy people are, but there is no direct link, as I see it, to Agile in that. But it could probably help maybe improve the organization if you work to increase it, I guess. But no immediate connection to Agile there, except for happy performing employees, maybe. Do you have other questions still?
Sí. ¿Cómo aplicar Agile en nuestra vida personal? ¿Cómo aplicar Agile a productos no tecnológicos?
Non-technological products, you're saying. Yeah. So it doesn't really matter what kind of products or services you are producing. The principles are the same. So, I mean, it could be software products, it could be cutting hair, it could be whatever you are doing, a service or product. It's about increasing innovation and creativity in people by empowering them and freeing human potential, right? So the industry is not important. It's about people everywhere in every organization. It's about people. It's about freeing up their potential. So Agile People is about finding the right place for every person, understanding them on a deeper level, removing the obstacles for them to be able to be happy and perform. And for that, you need Agile People coaches on the individual, team, and organizational level, giving them structures that could support them instead of hindering. Take a hindering structure, for example, is rigid fixed budgets linked to fixed performance targets and rewards and bonuses. That's a fixed structure that would hinder people, because you would become, okay, I'm only going to achieve this goal or target, and then I will get this reward. And this is what my department is going to achieve. And you are looking at the numbers instead of looking at how can we improve and what can we do here. Instead, you are focusing too much on numbers and financial measurements, which paradoxically then produce less outcome and less value to the whole organization in the longer perspective. But maybe we should continue a little bit, so I can explain about Agile HR and Agile leadership a little bit more, and to go through the principles, the Agile People Principles. Okay? Okay, so then I'll go on a little bit more. I always say that HR needs to lead the transformation, because I believe that HR has been sitting in the backseat for too long now. And it's time to step up and show what you can do for the organization, because it's all about the people and the system in which the people live and work. If we can give the right prerequisites to people, they will actually take care of the rest if we believe in them. We don't need to do more things. We need actually just to learn how to stop to hinder people from giving their best effort to the company by providing the wrong structure. And HR has the power to decide on these structures that can support people to perform or make it more difficult to contribute in creative and innovative manners. Because HR controls in big organizations change management, leadership programs, people development, talent acquisition, performance management, workforce planning, and all those deep structures for the organization. They are based on real and imagined laws of how we have to work, because this was decided in the industrial era. This is how we have to work, but it's not really like that. Management was actually invented by McKinsey. Did you know that? Over 100 years ago, he invented management. It's something that has been invented by people, and it can be removed by people too. If HR keeps holding on to the old ways of doing things, we don't have the possibility to change in any part of a large organization, because we are tied to these structures and processes. So HR can support or hinder this change towards a more agile organization. And that's why HR has to go first and show the way by first implementing it in their own department, and then trying out different things, experimenting, working with trial and error, and then take the stuff that is good and share that with the rest of the organization and coach them to work in the same manner. Here, HR has the opportunity to really make a difference. I have another a metaphor for leadership as well. I talk about the gardener metaphor for leadership, where we see the company as a garden, and there is an overall purpose with the garden. It could be to be as beautiful as possible, or to deliver fruits and vegetables. Regardless of the purpose, the garden needs to be taken care of to reach its purpose. We need to take care of the plants. Some like to grow in the shadow, some need some more sunshine, and we need to remove the weeds. Some like to grow with other plants of diverse kinds to develop faster and become beautiful together. And some need a lot of space. Some need lots of water, and some grow slower than others. So the agile leader is the gardener who takes care of the plants, trying to fulfill the purpose of the garden. Have you ever tried to scream or yell to a flower to grow more, better, faster? It doesn't work. I'm sure you know that and you understand that. So what can you do to make the flower grow faster and better? You can take care of the system around the flower. You can give it what it needs. It needs water, it needs sunshine, just the right amount, and every flower is different from the other one. The gardener can create the prerequisites for the plants to grow by giving the right conditions for every plant without forgetting about the whole garden, the purpose of the whole garden. So they have to also grow in harmony, right? So we cannot force this little seed to grow, but we can only give the right conditions and the right environment. So we talk about don't manage people, manage the system. So the garden, the soil, and everything around is the system. But we don't try to work on the plants themselves and scream to them to grow, because it won't work. It produces a the opposite effect, let's say, when somebody tells you something or yells at you. So we're going to go through all the Agile People Principles that we need to increase in organizations to be successful in the future, to release innovation and creativity. This is all about being more, it's not something fluffy, nice stuff. It's all about being more productive. You understand that? It's about being more profitable as an organization, being more competitive as an organization. The best thing is that you take care of your employees so that they can take care of your customers. That's what makes you successful in the future. It's about employee engagement, leads to a happy customer, which leads to a profitable company. First Agile People Principle today is transparency. So we need to increase transparency. It means that every person in the organization have access to the information and the knowledge that they need to have to be able to make the decisions that they need to make wherever they are in the organization. It's also a great control mechanism, because let's say you make all travel claims visible for everybody in the organization. Then you can be sure that travel cost will go down, because people will see what you are doing. Are you traveling business class? Are you only living at 5-star hotels in the business trip, etc.? And when people know that this is visible to everybody, they will not maybe do that as easily. The next one is visualization. We need to use pictures, images, prototypes, and visuals for a better common understanding. In Sweden, we have a saying, a picture says more than 1,000 words, and that's very true. Trust. Trust people rather than distrust. Default to trust. Not until you've been disappointed, maybe several times, you can start distrusting. And if you can't trust people, it should have consequences. We are not saying that people should get away with anything. Of course, it should have consequences, but we default first to trust. And this means that we also have theory Y leadership that makes people take ownership. Customer value, because everything in Agile is about creating this customer value. And if we talk about HR and managers, the customers are the employees. So you need to create value for employees. And for HR, it's also about creating value for the managers. Next one is focus, because you cannot do everything at the same time. I used to work at some large organizations where they used to have 8 to 10 simultaneous goals for every person. It's way too much. We need to focus, because otherwise we cannot deliver with good quality. Relative goals, as opposed to fixed goals, which are more binary, Relative goals are about continuously getting better at something. And some different kinds of models for relative goals are, for example, OKRs, objectives and key results. We also have KPIs, key performance indicators. They are both relative to their nature. And KPIs is for measuring the temperature on the whole organization. So never link a KPIs to a certain person. OKRs can be linked to certain persons, also to teams and to the whole organization. Continuous learning and improvement. A learning organization is what we want to create with the agile ways of working. It's when we make a lot of experiments and maybe fail sometimes and succeed sometimes that we have the greatest way of learning. We learn all the time when we make experiments. We learn when we succeed and when we fail. And that's the way to grow and also understand what is not working here. Increase psychological safety. I would say this is more important than everything else, because if you don't have psychological safety as a platform, you will have a great difficulty increasing the other principles. Increase diversity, because when we come from different places and we merge our competencies, our skills, our diverse thoughts, we create the best products and services. And we talk about diversity not just as being, the external kind of diversity, like gender or religion or race or sexual orientation, but we talk mainly here about cognitive diversity, the kind of diversity that you cannot see on the outside, how different needs we have, how different we are in our psychological basic desires. Working cross-functional teams, it's when we mix competencies and brains that we create more value, and we constantly learn from each other when we work together. Empowerment, because empowered employees have this authority to make important decisions when and where it's necessary. But never empower without also making sure that your people have access to the necessary information to make decisions, because that's not fair. You empower people and then they don't have the right information. That's not good leadership. Optimize for the whole, not per department. Always think about the whole organization when you try to produce value. Help each other between departments. And that means that we cannot really measure per department. We don't sub-optimize. More experimentation, because it's when we try new things that we have this possibility to find new solutions, to learn and get ideas for new products and services that our customers want and need for the future. Trial and error, similar to experimentation, we need to be able to make mistakes and learn from them. We tweak a bit, we try something different, and that's how we maximize the continuous learning. Emerging goals is goals that are not fixed or set in advance. They are emerging as we walk on that path. We discover that this goal that we have set for ourselves is not valid anymore. Now we have to change it. And maybe we then change direction slightly, not totally. So The future unfolds as we walk on the path instead of setting fixed goals. Accountability, holding each other accountable for work and for results in respectful ways, reminding each other of the goal, reminding each other of how can we work better and how can we produce stuff together. Authenticity is about showing up as yourself with respect for other people. Authenticity is the chapter that I wrote about in the book because I have a very personal relationship to authenticity. Boundary spanning is when we mix different departments with each other. We might create a buddy system, for example. That's a method to span boundaries between functional departments, between sciences. It could also be a geographical areas or knowledge areas or other social groups. It could be externally and internally and cross-organization. Then we have tell why and what and leave the how to the people. This is really agile. We point in the direction we are going. We tell what to do. The product owner tells about the what, the features, maybe user stories. And then we leave the how to the team to decide more exactly how to solve the task. We give direction, but we don't micromanage. Avoid sub-optimization is obviously the other side of optimize for the whole. So I will not comment on that. Individuals and interactions over processes and tools. I'm sure you recognize this one. It's the first and most important value of the Agile Manifesto. Of course, people and relationships are more important than rigid processes and tools because people are complex and they have power over processes and tools, and they can decide to follow or not follow processes and tools. Knowing people deeply. I've been talking a little bit about that because when you know people, you start to like people. And when you like people, you start to work better together. And then you also produce better outcome and value for your customers. I think we have a few left before we let some more questions in here. We have peer pressure, which doesn't have to be something bad. It's actually a very good way to keep people accountable for results and that they don't overspend company money. So transparency and peer pressure in combination will take care of a lot of control for you in an agile or teal organization. Collective intelligence, it's about using everybody's brain in the company, thinking together and creating solutions together. Clear goal and simple rules. Tell about the why, maybe about the what, but stay away from the how if you're a manager. Stable and semi-stable teams, because teams need time to become high performing. So we cannot work with project teams that are loosely put together to solve a certain goal or a certain task. We need people to really work together to get to know each other. Why do we then talk about semi-stable teams? Because teams can become too strong also. And if they become too strong, they start to see the other teams as enemies. We are better than the other teams, you know, this kind of statements. And then you might need to disrupt the team a little bit. Maybe change some members, maybe use a coach to work with them. Self-organization is the way we do work in agile organization. And it works when people have competence and information and a clear goal. Increase happiness. I don't have any comment for that because it's so obvious that we need to have fun at work. We don't just work to make money today. We also work because we want to realize ourselves. We want to have fun. And this is obvious. Give and receive positive feedback. It's to create a culture where people really appreciate each other. And we need to focus a lot more on the positive side, the positive feedback with kudos, kudo cards, you know, kudo walls, or even starting to tell each other things that we didn't say before. Positive feedback is always good. We can argue about constructive feedback. Is that really necessary? I would say maybe not. Maybe you say nothing at all when something is not something you like. Maybe you try to reinforce the strengths, the good sides instead, and they will take over eventually. Make mistakes and learn from them. This is the core of the Agile mindset. Continuous improvement is built on making mistakes. Then we have self-leadership. As well as we are self-organizing in teams, we also need to lead ourselves. It's actually here it starts with people who build themselves, who can lead themselves, who can take responsibility for their own learning, their own performance, their own engagement in organizations. So it's a lot about growing people. And as I write on this slide, in an agile organization, there is a lot more leadership, since everybody need to lead themselves, and maybe some also need to lead other people, like management. Grow people is the main task of HR and leaders. So growing people becomes extremely important. To have that common direction or alignment is about optimizing performance towards a shared vision. Okay, so that's some more. I'm going to let people in to do some questions now. Let's see. Okay, some Q&A maybe again. It's about 9:30. So these were all the Agile People Principles. And what questions do we have about them?
Sí, Pia, tenemos 10 preguntas en nuestra Q&A box. So, vamos a empezar con una pregunta que nos dejó Sandra García. ¿Cuál es el primer paso para generar una cultura ágil? ¿Cuál sería tu recomendación?
First step, actually, I just started to work with a Swedish organization who didn't do anything at all about Agile. No software development teams, no IT became Agile. And they called me and said, we want to start with HR. Because if you start with HR, you remove the limiting structures. If you start with finance, you remove the limiting structures so that everybody else can have the conditions to be agile. So I think HR is a really good place to start. But another thing is to create awareness about the need for change in our VUCA world, our reality today. And you do that, of course, by being educated, by educating yourself, by training the people in what does it mean to live in a world where anything can happen at any time. So a first good step is to create awareness, and you do that by training and by educating yourself. And if people don't want to educate yourself, you may do that collectively at work, that you give the thing we do right now. I mean, listen to people who has been working with this, listen to experts, bring in coaches, read books, let people educate themselves, and bring in Agile People coaches who can teach the others about Agile. I think that these are good first steps. And when HR starts, I think a good place for them to start is to start with themselves. When HR has started, they can bring it on to the leaders. And if HR and leaders go first, they will convince the rest of the organization. So that will not be a problem. Another tip for change that I usually talk about is that you don't start with the people who are not interested in changing and are negative to the change. You don't work with them. You work with the innovators. You work with the early adopters. You bring them closer to you, and then you let them go out there and convince the others. You don't waste time on the people who are negative, because you will never win. Some people will never change, and they don't want to, and that's a waste of time. So work with the people who are positive first. Make them your ambassadors.
Total.
Yes.
Empezar a cambiar esos paradigmas desde la misma gestión cultural. Bueno, tenemos ahora otra pregunta de Ángel Arenas. ¿En qué métodos nos podemos apoyar para romper los paradigmas tradicionales de algunos líderes sobre el control en los equipos que limitan la agilidad y el empoderamiento?
Yes, this is a very difficult thing to change people who have been working with command and control management maybe for 30 years. As I said before, it starts with awareness here, but it's also depending on what do you want, how do you want to organize your organization. Maybe many middle managers become superfluous, and of course they are afraid when they become superfluous, but the alternative way or route for them is really to become coaching or servant leaders or agile people coaches. So this is the path that they need to move towards to become valuable if the whole organization is going to change. And in a big traditional organization, it may be up to top management to decide whether the old kind of leadership is okay or not, you know. But HR also has some power here. They are deciding on the kind of leadership programs and training courses that they are buying for their leaders. So if they move to train people in agile leadership and say that this is the way we lead in our organization and this is the way that we train leaders, then that's also a path for change. Some managers will never change. That's just a fact. And then we need to think about, what will we do with them? Will they not fit in our garden anymore? Maybe we need to move them somewhere else.
Ok, sí, es validísimo pensar en eso. Carlos Coballo nos pregunta, ¿nos podrías hablar del camino de aprendizaje hacia la agilidad?
The learning path, if you didn't have any contact with Agile before, I would say you start with some fundamentals course for Agile. You understand the mindset first, and you understand the reality that we need to live in, and that adaptability and flexibility becomes crucial for a learning organization who all the time needs to kind of be flexible to see what's happening. How can we change now that the world is changing as well? So that's the first step. And then you need to start to develop yourself, right? So self-leadership, work on yourself, your own behaviors, your own habits, educate yourself in tools and methods and practices and models as well as mindset, principles, and values. And then go to your organization and try to be a change maker yourself. Ask questions. It's a very good way of making people think. It's not threatening. Ask yourself question. What if, you know, expand your mind. You don't have to be born with a growth mindset. You can actually create that for yourself by asking yourself questions that you wouldn't have asked before. What if this was possible? What if we could do that? Even if you don't believe that is possible, but what if it was possible, you know? So that's the kind of questions you can start asking yourself and then bring them to the people in your organization. What if we did it in another way? What if we tried something else? What if we made an experiment here and we see what happens and we learn from that? To ask the questions, I think, is the most powerful thing.
Totalmente de acuerdo. Y en ese sentido, pues creo que en Latinoamérica, y lo hablábamos contigo antes, Pia, aún le falta romper cada vez más el miedo a equivocarse y experimentar. Y es una condición necesaria en esa ruta de aprendizaje, ¿no? Gisela Montañez nos pregunta, ¿qué tipo de reconocimientos recomendarías para apoyar esta transformación o este cambio de mindset?
The cultural mindset, you mean? That actually, we in South America, we have a fantastic company. It's called Semco in Brazil. And the leader of that, I don't remember his name, Ricardo Semler, that's the name of the guy. He actually inherited this company from his father, and he knew nothing about business and you know, it's kind of thing, because he was a rock musician. But then he had to take care of this company and he had no idea how to do it. So he said, I can't do it. If you want to still keep your jobs, you have to take care of the organization, because they were losing money, right? So they were becoming less profitable. And guess what happened? People actually step up, and they had a lot of ideas of how to work differently and how to become profitable again. And they grow and grow and grow. And they are a huge corporation today, extremely profitable, and people are empowered, and they have kind of defied this cultural aspect that you talk about. I think many times people blame actually the country culture. We can't do this because we live in Slovenia, or we live in South Africa, or we live in wherever. But it's not about that. It's about the people in the organization and what you decide to do together. So I have found that company culture is many times a lot stronger than country culture, and can succeed to overtake a country culture if you work in such a company culture. And if you look at a startup, for example, in South America, I'm sure they are a lot more agile than an old traditional company. And this move from being an old traditional company, that's the hard thing, right? If you are starting a new venture, a new enterprise, it's a lot easier.
Sí, hay que empezar a retar, y creo que COVID también nos está invitando a retarnos y a ir a ese cambio de mindset bajo las nuevas circunstancias. Hay aún más preguntas, Pia. Con Agile, ¿dejas de ser multitask para convertirte en especialista de una sola tarea? Nos pregunta Patricia.
No, that's not actually necessary. It's very different for different people. But if you set OKRs, for example, for yourself, I recommend not setting more than 2 to 3 OKRs at the same period, at the same time, because we are not functioning that well when we have too many different things that we try to focus on at the same time. We don't deliver with the same quality when we do that. So it's better to have shorter periods, more focus on a few tasks, than a very long period and a very divided focus on many tasks. So then I say, okay, for the next 3 months, I will focus on this and this, maybe 2 things. And then for the next 3-month period, something else is the most important, so that you all the time work on different things and improve. But don't focus on too many tasks at the same time. It doesn't have to be exactly just one, but it's different for different people, different teams, different organizations, but fewer tasks, more focus is better than more things at the same time.
Ok, ahora vuelven a hacernos preguntas de la cultura, Pia. ¿Qué tanto impacto tiene la cultura de la organización sobre la adopción de los principios ágiles de los que nos has hablado?
Which is the part of culture. The principles will together make up your culture. So behaviors are a function of a person in their environment. This is the formula by Kurt Lewin from 1936. So culture is about all the behaviors and all the habits, everything that people say and do in an organization is part of the culture. The structures will also shape the culture, the processes, the approval workflows, the way you work with financial goals, the way you work with your IT systems, etc. And the physical environment will also affect culture. So remove limiting structures, add supporting structures, work with behaviors, try to increase good behaviors, and you do that by trying to increase the principles. The more you visualize, the more you collaborate, the more you work with experiments, etc. You can take all the 36 principles and work more with them, and they will ultimately create the culture.
Sí, todos los día a día en el campo de batalla se empieza a crear esa cultura. Eso está chévere. Nos hablan del gobierno, Pia, de las empresas de gobierno. ¿Crees tú que es posible aplicar agilidad en el gobierno y sabes de algún caso exitoso?
Yes, definitely. Yes, we have the government in Sweden, for example, is working a lot with lean and agile practices. And we have a trust-based commission, they call it, who are placing a lot of trust on the cities to make their own decisions. For example, they have empowered cities to take their own decisions and use the money in the best possible way for their city. So these principles and the values that we use in Agile are also very common in the Swedish government. And I have one Agile People coach. She works with social security government part in Sweden. She has translated everything to Swedish, all the training material, because they will not accept English. But that's another story. And yeah, they understand about this. In Sweden, we trust our government a lot, and that might be different from other countries as well. But yeah, they have always proved that we can trust them, and that might be the reason why we didn't go into lockdown with the COVID. We have managed quite well with practicing social distancing. And you don't have to say to the Swedish people that you have to do it because otherwise we will put you in jail. You know, you don't have to make a law against meeting other people, because people will naturally listen and do what is right, because we believe our government is giving us the right recommendations. So people will practice social distancing and people will be careful. So now we are in a very, very good position. Actually, our economy has not been that hurt either from lockdown, etc. So we are an open society now, and we can meet, but we think about, of course, to wash hands and to be careful and practice social distancing. So it's in our culture that we trust people. I think we have overall a wide view of people in Sweden, which I think is a really nice thing. And that I believe could be spread around the world as well.
Nos hablan ahora de la seguridad psicológica. ¿Cómo o qué prácticas nos recomiendas para empezar a trabajar y a fomentar esa seguridad psicológica en los equipos y en las organizaciones?
So I have a fantastic practice, and it's actually a game that you can play with your teams. So it's a very concrete tool that will open up for discussion about the difficult things, right? So you can use that to start talking about the issues that you normally don't talk about because it's sensitive stuff. And you find that it's a free game. You find it on agilepeople.com/sci-safe-game. So maybe we can write that somewhere so that everybody can go and have a look. Or would you like me to share it with you now on the screen? Okay, I can do that. So I'll just go to, let's see. I'm going to bring it up on my screen. Very concrete way of working with psychological safety, and to start to work with that in a good way.
Safe game. Okay.
Yeah, so it's coming. It's just a bit. Checking my internet here. It should come here now. So there are some instructions that you can read. The purpose of the game is to open up and share thoughts around areas that could increase or decrease how safe people feel to make mistakes in the organization. So how to play the online version is here. So different ways of playing depending on if you have previously worked as a team, or if you have been working as a team. If you haven't worked as a team, or if you have been working as a team, you can play it in different ways. You can play it, for example, in the retrospective, to think about what areas. Oh, now I went away from there. Sorry. What areas are we trying to improve after every sprint? Save game. There we go. And then you have the cards, and what you do is that you bring up some random cards, and you talk about the thing that is on the card. Either it has a green little guy on it, or it has a red little guy on it. So the green guy would be a card where if you increase it, it would also increase psychological safety. And if it's a red little guy on it, it would decrease psychological safety. Let me take an example here. We have, for example, freedom to fail. If we feel free to fail, it would increase psychological safety. And this one would be unhealthy competition. That would decrease psychological safety. And then you can take turns, and either you can say, okay, I want to bring up this one because I have experienced this in our team or in our organization or in a previous organization that I was with, and I have a story to tell about this. Or you can say, yeah, I was really feeling like a child in front of the boss yesterday, blah, blah. Or, now there is somebody in our team who feel that they are being seen as disruptive. And this is not a good thing, right? It would decrease psychological safety. So we have all these different cards, and it's a lot of them. It's 64 of them. We should be able to make choices without comparing ourselves to other people, for example, or freedom to not be likable. That's also a positive thing. Personal KPIs might not be a good thing. Lack of responsibility is also not a good thing. Reporting for reporting's sake. Listen first. That's a good rule. Having clarity on what my role is a good thing. Being helpful or humble or transparent. So you can play with this. It's a free game that I'm offering that you can use. Okay.
Pia, está genial, además que nos abre la conversación sobre temas que los equipos no suelen conversar, no suelen hablar. Entonces, creo que sale de los supuestos y abre la conversación. Entonces, muchas gracias por compartirnos esta herramienta. Aún tenemos algunas preguntas. Un poco... a ver, podríamos decir que al hacer uso de los principios de Agile People, se enfocarían en crear una cultura en la organización. Y este camino a seguir en las organizaciones, entonces comenzaría por HR.
It can start anywhere in the organization. The reason why I work with HR and management is because if HR and management goes first, everybody else will follow. So it becomes easier. But really, you can be just a normal person in any team. And you can say, okay, let's look at the Agile People Principles. Maybe we can improve work here. And anybody can do that. Anybody can start anywhere in the organization. Because these are positive things, and it's nothing threatening or dangerous or threatening to management, really. It's built for improving, and it's built for doing something good for your organization. And I think you will be very respected if you would suggest to work with increasing them.
Ok, excelente. Nos hablan de libros y hay dos preguntas como conectadas. La primera es, ¿cuál es la diferencia entre los dos libros que has escrito hablando de Agile People y Agile People Principles? ¿Cuál es la principal diferencia y qué otros libros nos recomendarías para seguir profundizando en este tema?
Oh, there are plenty of books, obviously. Maybe I'll just share my screen again and talk about my books first. Let's see where they are here. Okay. So I will share my screen first, and then I will show this book. So this one is my first book. It's based on all my experiences from large international companies that I've been working with, also some mid-sized and smaller startups. And it's a lot of common sense because I was thinking about how can we bring Agile from our software and IT development projects to HR and management. How can we do that? Because these principles really work anyway, anywhere in the organization. So I wrote the book because I wanted to spread these thoughts from my Agile HR training that I had been running them for a number of years. And I wanted to have some course literature for the course. So I needed, because there were no books about this topic, and I needed to have course literature. So that this is mainly why I wrote it. Then we have the second one was the Agile People Picture book, which really has the same message as the first book, but it's easier to understand. I used to say it's a perfect book for management teams because they have a very short attention span. They'd rather look at pictures than read a lot of text. And you can grasp Agile in a simple and quick way by looking at the pictures and reading the small messages below the pictures. Some people read this book first because and because they get inspired, and then they buy the second book as well. This one is more about the principles, and it's been co-written together with all all the Agile people from around the world. So it contains also some chapter about the Agile People Coach that reminded me now that we should go to have a look at the Agile People Coach maybe as well. So if I skip to the Agile People Coach part of this presentation, we can talk about that a little bit. And we're talking about performance here, about control, about problems with the budget, about Agile HR and employee engagement and T-shaped people, principles for Agile HR. We have Agile leadership, from controlling to enabling. And then we have this one that we talked about, and the Agile leadership principles. And now we get into the Agile People Coach. So if an Agile coach has a lot of focus on processes and maybe a little less on people and the product, an Agile People Coach has definitely deep people skills. They know something about psychology and maybe sociology and how people relate to each other, what people are motivated by, how they work best together, and how we should make the organization so that people want to work instead of having to work. So if you come from HR or if you come from management, you may have good or deep people skills. You probably have studied psychology, which maybe an Agile coach hasn't done. They could have done it, but usually an Agile coach comes from IT. They come from project management in IT, or they come from working as a Scrum Master or a developer or something like that. So they don't have that people-heavy background, let's say. So that's why HR and managers are perfect for becoming Agile people coaches. And we can work on different levels as an Agile people coach in an organization. We can work with personal development for ourselves, also helping our peers or colleagues to develop, coaching our peers. We can work with team coaching to make the team go from being immature to high performing. And we can work on the structures and the culture of the whole organization, or work with Agile strategy, emerging goals and emerging strategy. So it depends on what level we are in the organization. And then we can take different roles. And here we see, maybe we come from leadership, maybe we come from HR, maybe we are a master of Agile. This is a really important skill set if you work as an Agile people coach. And you will be able to take the different roles of the Agile coach, obviously, trainer, mentor, coach, and facilitator. But we also have added some roles here for the Agile people coach. And these roles are the navigator, and this is about complexity, understanding the organization as a system, and be change catalysts, apply emergent strategy and systems thinking. This is the navigation role. And the guide role is about expertise in the domain that we are working in and with. It could be the product domain, for example. We have a full understanding of the business value chain. So then we would take the guide role. The thing with the Agile People Coach is that you choose your stance depending on the need of the organization. So you can step out of the system and you can stand outside the system and look at the system as a reflective observer, as you can see here. This is the ability to choose the right role to play depending on the situation, on the context, the people, what time are we finding ourselves in right now, etc. So you step outside the system, you look at the system from outside and you say, okay, so what role should I now take when I step into the system again? How can I make myself most useful? And this is the agility, to be able to choose your role depending on the situation. Where can I do most use of myself right now? So this is the Agile People Coach role that we have created. And the thing is that we can only change organizations by removing limiting structures together. So HR cannot do it alone. Finance cannot do it alone. Management cannot do it alone. Everybody has to work together. That's why we need to span boundaries and work cross-functionally with, for example, buddy systems and things like that. And as we know, Agile is not a recipe. When we work with Agile, we don't follow any recipes. There are no best solutions that always work. And we do know that when we stick to the Agile People Principles, it tends to work well. Best practice, as you know, is always past practice, and only the mediocre companies today follow best practice, because you will never be better than your competitors if you follow best practice. Rules and regulations and rigid processes and systems have a tendency to become too many and too prescriptive to work well. But the principles that we are talking about here, they are stretchable, and you can choose to what degree you try to apply them to your organization. And that's why we in Agile People prefer to work with the principles as the basis. And then you can use different tools to make them come alive. But it's not guaranteed that the tools will work well for you. We need to add this dose of Agile culture and the right conditions in the environment for the tools to work. And then having said that we never have any recipes, I'm going to give you a recipe for how to grow culture. So we change and remove limiting structures, mainly from finance and HR. And then we increase supporting structures. It could be OKRs, for example, a buddy system, some structure to span boundaries between departments, some tool to increase psychological safety, maybe Scrum, maybe visualization, maybe Kanban boards or Trello boards that would support an Agile culture. And then we start to show new behaviors that come from learning new ways of acting and working. Because when we don't have the old structures, this will be easy, right? And then we repeat from one again, continue to change, remove limiting structure. Take it step by step. Okay, question this approval workflow, for example. Is it really necessary? Do we really need this workflow? What value does it bring? Or what happens if we remove it? What would happen then? Let's try. Let's make an experiment. So that's what I wanted to share with you today, I guess. Do we have any last questions? Remaining questions?
Sí, tenemos aún preguntas, Pia. Tenemos esta que habla un poco de lo último que nos venías hablando, de los principios para seguir generando esta cultura y cambiando las estructuras y las redes, y es, ¿cuáles serían, si tuvieras que iniciar por unos principios y nos hablaste de seguridad psicológica, cuáles serían esos otros principios poderosos para empezar a cambiar el comportamiento y los hábitos de las personas en este mindset ágil?
Oh, that's so difficult to choose between the principles. They are all important, really. But psychological safety is one of the first, because if you don't have that, you will not be able to try out different principles. Trust, obviously. Self-development, start with yourself. Self-organization and self-development, self-leadership is one of the most important to start with. If everybody start with that, I think we have a good chance to succeed to change the culture.
Excelente. Nos habla Adriana Navas también de si nos puedes dar ejemplos, si conoces donde áreas de recursos humanos ya sean 100% ágiles y si hay algún referente que pudieras compartir.
Yes, we have lots of examples of Agile HR departments, more or less. The obvious examples out there are more or less who have taken it a step even further are the teal organizations, I would say. And then HR departments in small organizations are almost always agile, all of them. I haven't found any small startup or tech organization who has an un-agile HR department. All of the big ones are on a learning journey. And here in Sweden, we have IKEA, we have Volvo, we have many big companies who are on the learning journey. Some people have come further, some will never be convinced. Some HR departments have moved quicker than others. Some are using some tools, some are working with themselves, some are working together with the organization and co-creating the HR deliverables. I know that Vistaprint is doing fantastic work in this area. I know an English company called Sky, who are working very seriously with Agile HR. What other countries do we have? You know, Morningstar in the US. We have Buurtzorg. They don't have HR. So some organizations don't work with HR anymore. They work with management taking on this task, or they have certain people who take the responsibility of the HR tasks that they didn't have before. Yeah, these are some examples. What else? TV4, a media company in Sweden that I worked with. Some other companies I worked with is some suppliers to Volvo. They also are working to become more agile. So a lot of organizations are somewhere on the journey. Of the biggest organizations, I can say that not everybody are working according to the agile values and principles. Not everybody, almost never everybody is doing it, because there will always be people who resist, who will stick to the old ways of working. But I think it's a matter of time, and it's about culture, a lot about culture. I think the tech companies, I worked also with banks, and I worked with ING in the Netherlands and a Swedish bank where we implemented OKRs. And yeah, it's all over.
Excelente, Pia, gracias. Otra pregunta. Cuando el miedo y la resistencia al cambio es generalizada, incluso en los departamentos de recursos humanos, ¿cómo podemos identificar una oportunidad para entrar y mover la transformación y mover el cambio? ¿Qué nos recomendarías?
Well, send them to me. Or some other agile people out there. Bring in agile people as trainers, create awareness, point to the smaller, faster players around who will outperform your organization if you don't change. To be employable for the future for HR, they need to learn these things. These are trends not just in Agile, but there are many HR movements out there who are working with similar approaches. There is one movement called Disrupt HR, for example, and other movements who are talking about similar things, that work life is changing, workplaces are changing, and the new people who we want to employ, they have different demands than old traditional organizations can appreciate and understand. So to be able to attract those people, we have to change. So I think you can put some pressure on them, question a bit, but as always, carefully, gently, and questions are always better than threats, obviously.
Muchas gracias. Nicolás nos pregunta, ¿cómo podemos motivar a los líderes a ser parte de la transformación y de Agile?
This is the same question again. So bring awareness to what's happening in the world. And right now we have this golden opportunity with Corona, COVID-19, as an example of what can happen in the world and why is it so important to be flexible and adaptable in this new reality. So it's a perfect example to point to, I think, and ask them about the budgets that they worked on last year. What happened to that? And did things turn out the way they thought? And can we really control people? Can we control the future? Ask them if they still believe that. And how can we control when people are working from home? There is no possibility. So Agile is the obvious path to move to and towards, where you start to trust people and that they want to take responsibility, because we cannot really control people anymore when they are working from home. So it's a golden time right now to put focus on these questions and to advocate for a more agile future. So grab this opportunity is my advice. Mm-hmm.
Vale. Y quisiera cerrar, Carlos Collado ha hecho varias preguntas muy activas frente a cómo empezar en este mundo de agilidad y desde el Agile People. Si hay certificaciones de Agile People, cómo lo puede hacer en este momento, y dado que el COVID también nos invita a ser más remotos, qué recursos le puedes recomendar si él quiere empezar a trabajar en toda esta línea de certificarse, de aprender e incluso asesorar a otros.
Yes. So I work with two certifications. It's Agile HR and Agile Leadership, and both of them are available online. And I can share you the link. I'm sharing it right now. Moving to the events page, which is quite slow. I don't know why. It's probably somebody else online except me. But the address is here, agilepeople.com/events. We will probably finally get there. There is a lot of different facilitators and trainers out there. So I have some sessions online now in Swedish. I also have a lot in English. We have some here, Agility in HR, for example, which is online. There is one in Mexico. I'm not sure who is doing that, but you can go inside and look. Online fundamentals and HR again. I am training, let's see, there's in French. There is some Spanish trainers as well. If you want to become a facilitator with us, with Agile People, or a coach, you can also visit my training. I'm running one training right now. I have another one starting on October 19. So these are the tracks that I'm offering for coaches, facilitators, and IC Agile instructors. An IC Agile instructor can then also certify other people, so to speak. So here are all the links and the explanations and the dates and everything else. But if you want to become, or if you want to have the training in Spanish, I can point to what facilitators you can contact. It's one woman called Silvia Brenes. She is in Colombia. No, she's in Costa Rica, sorry. And she is actually translating the slides. Then we have Claudia Patricia Salas Brajo. She's in Spain and South America. She's doing a lot of training in South America currently. We have also Hiroshi, he's in Peru. Kasia is in Spain. She's also speaking Spanish. So we have some people who are giving Spanish training. This is Silvia from Costa Rica. She's giving online training all the time now. And you can find her courses in the events list as well. Yeah, so welcome to agilepeople.com and have a look and ask me any questions if you have any. You can just send me an email, or you can be invited to our Slack group, or you can contact me on LinkedIn. So lots of opportunities.
Así es. Y nos hablaron de tu presentación. Si hay oportunidad de, alguna persona nos comentaba por Facebook Live que también estuvieron conectados. Aquí nos preguntan, vemos que algunos slides no pudimos cubrirlos hoy. ¿Dónde la podemos consultar? ¿Es posible consultar esta presentación?
Yes. What I will do is that, Sandra, I will send you the PDF version of the presentation of this call so that you can distribute it to all participants. And then we will also see the lucky winners, I guess, of the contest of the tickets. Yeah.
Claro que sí. Bueno, nosotros tuvimos 80 personas conectadas durante la sesión en su momento. Usualmente cuando se extiende, ya son las 2:30 en Colombia, pues bajamos y hoy en este instante tenemos a 45 personas conectadas. Entonces vamos a nombrar uno de nuestros participantes, el que hizo más preguntas y estuvo mucho más participativo, se llevará uno de los pases gratuitos pues que nos ofrece Pia, que es un pase golden para el lanzamiento del libro Agile People Principles, que trae una versión online del libro también. Y esa persona fue Carlos Collado. Entonces, Carlos, un aplauso para ti. Has ganado el primer pase. Entonces, nosotros nos comunicaremos contigo a través de tus redes y por correo electrónico para hacerte llegar el código con el cual podrás acceder a estos recursos. Entonces, felicitaciones, Carlos. Qué bueno. Y el segundo lo vamos a hacer aleatorio a los de resistencia, a estos participantes que aún están aquí, a esos espectadores que siguen conectados con nosotros. Y lo vamos a hacer aleatoriamente no sé si yo les puedo compartir la pantalla, pero no van a poder ver el Zoom. Lo voy a elegir súper aleatoriamente. Acá tengo. Oscar Luque fue el segundo ganador. Déjanos saber, Oscar, si estás acá. Tienes que estar presente para que te lleves este segundo código de acceso. Déjanos saber en los comentarios que estás aquí. Sí, señora. Listo. Felicitaciones, Oscar. Eres el segundo ganador del segundo pase. Y recuerden que el tercer pase que Pia muy generosamente nos ha dado, lo daremos por redes sociales. Nosotros usualmente lo que hacemos, y también para contarte, Pia, es promocionamos la grabación también de este webinar. Entonces hacemos alguna publicación por nuestros canales que son YouTube, LinkedIn y Instagram. Entonces estén muy atentos, por favor, a nuestras redes sociales, porque a través de ellos la próxima semana estaremos sorteando el tercer pase Golden al lanzamiento del libro Agile People Principles. Seguimos súper conectados. Pia, de verdad que darte las gracias por este espacio que ha sido tan importante para todos nosotros. Nosotros desde Agility Changes también estamos trabajando en todo este tema de HR y queremos seguir claramente en contacto con Agile People y somos parte de la comunidad. Así que muchísimas gracias, Pia, por tu tiempo, por tu generosidad y por todo tu conocimiento. ¿Vale?
Thank you for letting me contribute. Thank you so much. Very happy.
A ti, muchísimas gracias. Nos vemos en un próximo Agile Critics. Estén muy atentos a nuestras redes para poder seguirlo compartiendo. Entonces, muchas gracias.